I'm Dr. Joseph MT, Department of Sociology, University of Mumbai, and this is the e-Pathshala project on religion and society. We are going into module 28, which is titled Religious Conversions in India. Now, this is one of the kind of modules, or one of the kind of facts that people are talking about, that is religious conversions in India. What do we mean by religious conversion? And historically, what are the modes in which conversions have happened? In India, for example, there has been a lot of talk about what is conversion movements. And there are ways in which a particular religious community in India, the Christian community, and to some extent the Islamic community, are associated with the notion of religious conversion. Now, what happens? Are there not forms of conversions in other religions as well? And what are the kind of ways in which we understand them? These are the issues that we will look at in this module. Understanding religious conversions in social, political, and historical context. The academic study of religious conversion, although pioneered a century ago by William James in his celebrated Gifford Lectures, the varieties of religious experience is still very much in its infancy. To begin with a delicate issue like religious conversion, it is important to remember not to presume its boundaries for the debate on this topic. As it stands, religion is strength as well as weakness worldwide, and particularly in India. Religion thus plays a dominant role in governing individuals and their institutions in all direct and indirect ways. Even institutions like polity has not been left untouched by religion and religious ideologies in the recent past. This is how we come across politics of religion, or rather religion in politics. Religion can thus make or break, unite or divide groups of individuals and institutions across the world. Religion that otherwise functions in backdrop or in a dormant manner suddenly becomes dynamic when there is sudden value-loaded emphasis on one's religion at the cost of others' religion or its ideology. The subtle examples of this would include arguments and fights, commenting on one's religion in public places, grumbling during others' religious processions, that's comparing negatively with one's own religious celebrations, etc. The prominent examples are demolition of places of worship, riots, propaganda during elections, and of course religious conversions. In all such instances, religion becomes the center of attraction. Thus, politics also plays an important role in religious matters, just as religion does in political matters. And nowhere is it more evident than the heated argument surrounding the issue of religious conversions in India. Therefore, today, a thorough understanding of religious ideologies and religious differences is apparently necessary for attaining religious harmony in countries like India, which are culturally, regionally, geographically, and linguistically diverse. Religious conversion in the Indian context is not easy to understand, as there are no straightforward answers to the questions arising out of religious conversions. Conversion neither happens in isolation nor results in changes in only religious sphere of one's life. Multiple of causes lead to the act of getting converted to another religion, which in turn leads to multiple consequences, or rather negotiations, across the social, cultural, and religious as well as ritual spheres at the individual as well as community levels. Precisely for this reason, we cannot understand it from two extremely narrow and restrained perspectives of those who are pro-conversion and those who are anti-conversion. Besides, while bringing about changes in an individual's or community's religious life, conversion undoubtedly changes the separation of individuals with the social institutions in that community and society at large. Some amount of change is inevitable in various aspects of social life, and therefore an exclusive, undivided position or even an opinion on this matter is not recommended. Also, as mentioned earlier, it cannot be denied that conversion means it cannot be denied that conversion means different things in different religions, socio-cultural and political context as well as historical context. In other words, while looking at the discourse on conversion, it should always be noted the agency of the people should be thoroughly acknowledged without undermining the contextual realities mentioned above. Robinson and Clark clarify on how there is something more than God to religious conversion, which includes world and human beings, these being the three important interlocking and interdependent dominant symbols affecting in a dynamic way. With an idea of such interrelationships, it becomes clear that the point of initial contact between groups is indeed diverse and definitely unpredictable. Therefore, while in some situations religious conversion may begin with a compelling vision of God, it may perhaps emanate from a more attractive notion of the world or of human beings in other contexts. Interestingly, they also point out to some scholars happen to recognize Christianity, Islam, and even Buddhism as religions but have problems for giving the same status to Hinduism. The issue of conversion operates within the boundaries that are absolutely fluid, confusing, and overlapping. Therefore, there are instances when certain religious traditions like Islam and Christianity are considered to be proselytizing or evangelizing by character. That is, they firmly believe and desire to bring the unbeliever into the fold. Hinduism is rather seen as a religion that would expand by natural reproduction. But such conclusions are problematic as they are highly complex in character. For instance, modern Hinduism is known to have made an attempt to define itself as a faith that can attract converts. Hinduism is then depicted along the lines of Christianity or Islam as having canonical rituals with precepts and obligations like Islam, with sacraments like Christianity, and with a conversion strategy that models itself on both. It then becomes important to reconsider such theoretical arguments in order to explain why conversion is perceived while talking about Islam or Christianity and becomes irrelevant for South Asian religions like Hinduism and Sikhism. With such an understanding, it is suggested one can think of the differences between the theory and practice of conversion within particular religious traditions. It should be well understood and remembered that the theories about religious conversions are put forth by a theological elite or specialists of particular religious traditions and not from the lay people who often understand the term differently. Besides, paradoxically and exclusively, the exclusivity that is emphasized in certain conversion cases is very hypothetically assumed, which varies greatly in reality. This explains how the caste system is still prevalent among the converts, along with religious practices of their new and former religions, which means, in reality, a lot of accommodation and negotiation happens in the backdrop, which becomes apparent only when one considers the ground reality with all its factors that affect the decision for conversion. Conversion can interestingly be seen as a fluid process of changing affiliations of religious beliefs and traditions with a wide range of possibilities. These possibilities may range from the more or less non-exclusive to the rigidly exclusive. Moreover, it also cannot be negated that these possibilities might manifest themselves in different ways, religious traditions, or broadly within the same religious tradition at different moments of time. Conversions manifest in different temporal and spatial contexts. In fact, the most crucial aspect to remember is that context is very important in dealing with conversion. Often we come across the popular understanding that draws a distinction between inside religions, which do not seek to convert, and outside religions, which strongly want new followers. But such simplistic formulation has little historical validity or analytical usefulness. For example, two prominent modes of conversions are the 16th century Catholicism in Goa and modern Buddhism. Then there have been mass as well as individual conversions. Considering these facts, it is important to remember that none of these differences may be easily mapped onto the divide between insider and outsider religions. At different moments of time and in different contexts, various traditions and denominations have worked in remarkably different ways. Kuhlman, while dealing with the problem of untouchability from a historical perspective among some untouchable communities in southern India, looks at how adoption of a new religious identity through mass conversion can become an escape route as part of an effort to gain a more dignified status in society, as seen in southern Travancore in the 19th century. Besides, important parts of his analysis were processes of Christianization and Sanskritization, seen as adaptation to the practices of a great tradition without complete rejection of the little folk tradition. Likewise, Buga, while describing the complexity of the dialogue between Christianity and Hinduism, highlights the relationship between material production and conversion to Christianity. She focuses on the manner in which material gains become agencies of the mission process, thus enhancing the missionary efforts. In an attempt to define conversion, Lawrenson states that formal conversion almost always embodies at least two things: a partial willingness to accept the beliefs and values of new religion, and a commitment to perform its exterior rites and ceremonies. However, he has not explicitly mentioned the social dimension of conversion. This is to say that conversion usually has a social or communal consequence, since rituals, exterior rites, and ceremonies almost invariably include a formal admission or baptism into the new community. And this official admission baptism is usually like a spiritual rebirth that has profound social or communal impact on the converts. However, this underestimated point has been impressively dealt with by Dr. Hardy, who has attempted a general history of British India's Muslims with a deeper perspective. He asserts that the self-image of Muslims in pre-British India and under British rule was radically different. Thus, British rule created altogether a new set of conditions, roles, and aspirations for the Muslims in India. Islam in India, professed more as a way of life and as belief than as a political force, has seen different shades of self-realization under different Turkish, Arabic, and Iranian political and social influences. Another important aspect was their occupational pattern that varied extensively depending upon the presence of Muslim merchants, as well as the degree of exclusivity demanded and maintained through claims of foreign descent. However, in rural areas and even in towns, they were indistinguishable in occupation from surrounding non-Muslims. Also, their mother tongue was usually the dialect of the region, spoken by non-Muslims around them, in an attempt to answer how such a variety of people become Muslims. That brings out the missing social dimension of conversion in its definition. Hardy writes that in Indian life, conversion means a more change of fellowship and of conduct of inner life, although the latter may in time occur, and therefore every convert to Islam becomes uniquely different and can never be equated in terms of extent and intensity with the other Muslims in Islam in India. So while their old associates are left behind for the purposes of marriages, etc., their old ways are not. This highlights the underlying context of their conversion to Islam. Many, under the Muslim rule, opted to convert for the sake of social convenience as well as the assurance of high status. The case is somewhat similar to early conversions to Christianity in southern India. The earliest known India's encounter with Christianity was the community of Syrian Christians of Kerala, which was the result of the evangelical efforts of St. Thomas, who is believed to have arrived on the Malabar coast in AD 52. When the Portuguese arrived in the 16th century, it was perhaps the second major encounter with Christianity. In this phase of history, trade and conquest and Christianization were all happening at the same time, and therefore sword and cross went hand in hand. Initial conversions took place between 1527 and 1549 among castes of fishermen and people with boat handling skills such as Mukkuvars and Paravas along the southern coast of India. For these castes involved in occupations considered low and ritually defiling, conversion to Christianity not only helped them climb the status ladder, but also heightened a sense of distinctiveness from the agrarian caste world. For Parava, pearl fishers, moreover, alliance with the Portuguese yielded economic and political benefits. Christianity was the religion of the rulers, and conversion was often viewed as the first step toward acquiring some of the superiority of their position. Thus, for the high caste, conversion meant alignment with the rulers and the protection of their economic, social, and ritual privileges. For the low caste, there may have been the expectation of social mobility through movement into a non-traditional, pollution-neutral occupations opened up by the new regime. However, the converted Hindus retained their mother tongue and caste status even after becoming Christian. Based on their previous caste affiliations, the new converts were usually lumped into New Catholic castes. The converts from the priestly Brahmin class were Brahmins. All Brahmin subcastes such as the Gauds, Saraswat Brahmins, Padayas and Devanyas, and especially the goldsmith and a few fellow merchants were lumped into the Christian caste Brahmon. The converts from the Kshatriya and Vaishyavani castes became Chardos, and those Vaishyavanis who couldn't become Chardos formed a new caste, Gaudos. Those converts from the Gaudas, Kunbis and other lower castes were grouped together as Sudhirs, equivalent to the Shudras. The Brahmons, the Chardos, the Gaudos have been traditionally seen as high castes in the Goan Catholic caste hierarchy. In the light of the discussion of the early conversions, an important argument mentioned earlier about perceiving conversion in the cases of Hinduism and Sikhism can be again looked at. Religions and religious traditions like Buddhism and Jainism, Sikhism, and within Hinduism with reference to Bhakti movement, there have been cases of followers converting from an unjust caste-based society to a more liberal one in order to have equality on the caste and gender lines. In the words of M. Srinivas, the Bhakti movement of medieval India was really a pan-Indian movement, attracting large amount of men and women from the lower orders, and it was even crossed the religious divide between Hindus and Muslims, as with Kabir and much later Shirdi Sai Baba. There are some obvious examples, including the recent ones of Baba Sahib Ambedkar's conversion to Buddhism with 1 million followers in 1956, of conversions of either and ex-untouchables, marginalized or excluded communities and groups to other faiths, showing strong rejection of Hinduism and Brahmanism. Religious conversions are described as redemptive. In India, conversion can be categorized into 3 major chronological periods: pre-British, British and post-independence. Of course, there is further and finer differentiation within each one of these. The pre-British period spans through many centuries and is therefore difficult to understand. And therefore difficult to comprehend the meanings of various conversions that took place in this huge place. The conversions in this case included indigenous conversion movements such as to Jainism and Buddhism, besides conversion to Islam mediated through trading associations, Sufism and political linkages. Moreover, conversions to Christianity in Kerala, as well as conversions to Catholicism in Goa and to Protestantism in some parts of South India, also fall within this category. The missionary activity was associated with the British period in a very complex and tricky manner. Though initially hostile, the British policy towards such efforts became quite favorable by the early 19th century. In this period, there were both mass as well as individual conversions to Christianity, along with the lower social groups converting to other traditions and faiths. Converting to other traditions like Sikhism, Islam, the Shuddhi movement of the Arya Samaj and the various tribal reform movements. Due to the existing disabilities of the caste strictures and structures, the lowly groups attempted to move out of it, and Christianization was one of the possible options to bring about a change, along with conversions to Islam, Sikhism or the reformed Hinduism of the Arya Samaj. Finally, the post-independence period saw various conversion movements connected with political movements as well as aspirations for political independence and autonomy for greater social mobility and economic betterment. However, after independence, there have been positive institutional changes due to a secular constitution, which resulted in the conversions as narrowly diminishing. However, there have been cases of revolt amongst the deprived caste, like the one on Meenakshipuram in Tamil Nadu against upper caste. Other examples in this category include Ambedkar's decision of mass conversion to Buddhism, the conversion to Islam in Tamil Nadu, and to Christianity among the various tribal groups. The Hindu right movement has also politicized the issue of conversion to a great extent. But a decisive point in all these, across all the phases of history, regardless of who is converting whom, is converting and what is being converted to. The converts did carry their caste identities and their customs and rituals, thus negotiating between their old and new religious identities. Religious conversion to incompatible views. Having understood the context of conversions, it is now important for us to understand the two contrasting positions that the individuals, communities, and even political regimes are known to have taken on the issue of conversion. Both the positions are very clear, and the followers of both positions are adamant in their views. On the one hand, we have those who plead for ban on conversions, and on the other, we have those who argue that conversion is a fundamental human right to be protected in a democracy. The Indian Constitution sees religion as a matter of the freedom of conscience. Freedom to convert a person from one religion to another has not been expressly specified in the Indian Constitution. It can be understood as a derivative right following the right to freely profess, practice and propagate religion of one's choice, an important fundamental and democratic right given to every human citizen under Article 25 of the Indian Constitution. The ongoing argument is that does the right to propagate one's religion include the right to convert as well? However, others have equally vehemently argued that the meaning of right to propagate cannot be stretched to mean right to convert. One therefore needs to understand that the phenomenon of conversion has been subjected to serious misunderstandings, misinformation and even malicious propaganda. Most of the stories of proselytization are spread by political parties with vested interest to malign minority communities. It is therefore clear that debate surrounding the issue of conversion is highly inevitable. But again, people who particularly oppose conversions do not make an attempt to consider the historical necessity in which conversion can become an issue for others. Gandhian perspective, religious and social dimensions of conversions. Being born and brought up in a deeply religious setup, Gandhi believed in Sarvadharma Sambhav. However, he also believed that all religions originate from the same God and that thus preach the same doctrines. He looked at proselytization by Christians, Tabligh by Muslims or Shuddhi by Hindus as attempts to simply add numbers to their respective faiths. Swami Vivekananda was equally disturbed by missionary activities, but it was only Mahatma Gandhi who persistently and doggedly expressed his criticism of conversions of Hindus to Christianity as well as Islam, even while passionately advocating eradication of social evils, including untouchability. Gandhi had strong convictions for opposing conversions. Primarily, he believed that all paths lead to the same God, and that all religions are equally true, and that God can be realized through any path. And therefore he was against the belief that any religion could be better than the other. Ambedkar's perspective, conversion as an alternative. Here it is important to understand the issue of conversion from an extremely contrasting point of view. Ambedkar and Gandhi had different worldviews, particularly about religion and conversion. Unlike Gandhi, Ambedkar wanted to bring about a change in the core structure of Hinduism, which according to him was responsible for the existing caste system. According to Ambedkar, the low status degradation and low esteem of the untouchable should be attributed to the core values of Hinduism. It was his contention that a religion would soon traverse the Indian wanted religion that favors and cures others must be destroyed. They therefore wanted to leave his discriminatory religion of inequality and thus embraced Buddhism along with lakhs of followers on 14th October 1956. He reasoned out that in order to get socio-economic political justice for the downtrodden, there is no harm in accepting another faith which will be just, secular and rational. Ambedkar strongly advocated conversion in order to gain social mobility in the society. He wanted to overthrow the existing caste system and create a just society. He looked at Buddhism as an egalitarian religion, which was not the character of Hinduism. He was thus completely convinced. Thus conversion was the only best available alternative to the downtrodden and weaker sections of the society. From all this one can make out that for Ambedkar and other like-minded persons, for instance missionaries, conversion effectively meant a road that could lead the weaker people away from the existing discriminatory social setup. Even with the same perspective, we can look at the various conversion movements amongst the tribals where the converters wanted them to come closer to their faith and lifestyles and thus leave behind an isolated life full of discrimination and disorder. Order and opportunities therefore could only be possible when one forgoes his religious dogmas and practices and thus adopt the new appropriate religion along with its canons and rituals. In this module, we have looked at the different shades of meaning of religious conversion in different historical and religious contexts. How does conversion as a word get attached to a particular religious settings and not the others? And what are the processes involved in all of this? And what happens to identities that get formed after conversions? This is what we look at in this module. Thank you.